Hey everyone, it's Lauren Burns from SJF Law Group, and today we're going to talk about probate, and specifically, does it need probate? So before we can ask, does it need probate, first we need to find out what probate is. Probate is the court process that's sometimes necessary to distribute someone's property to their beneficiaries after they've passed away. Emphasis there on sometimes necessary, it's not always necessary. But when it is, it's oftentimes very time consuming and expensive, and you definitely want to speak with an estate planning attorney because probate is completely avoidable using a variety of different estate planning tools. So, when do you need or not need probate? Probate is needed or it's necessary when money or property doesn't have some kind of way, whether automatically or by operation of law, of getting to the intended beneficiary. So, stated the opposite way, it's not needed when money or property passes to someone's beneficiary automatically or some other way after the person dies. This is a question that we get all the time. Why do I need probate if I have a will? And the answer to that is that the will doesn't keep you out of probate, it only controls the probate process. So if something doesn't need to go through probate, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, then it doesn't matter what the will says. If your property or your asset or whatever you're looking at passes to a beneficiary some other way, then the will doesn't have any control of that. The will only says what happens or who gets it or who the beneficiaries are in a probate process during the probate administration. So for this little exercise, we're going to be looking at two simple types of assets. We're going to look at bank accounts and real estate. When you look at real estate and how that pertains to probate, you have to take a look at how the real estate is titled. And generally, you can own real estate in these four different ways. We're going to talk very basic today, very general for our discussion today. So the first one here is tenants by the entirety. This is only available for married couples. So if you are married and you own your property as a married couple, then you own your property as tenants by the entireties. The next one is joint tenants with rights of survivorship. This is for other people who own property together. This is for co-ownership. And when you own something or when you own a piece of property with someone else with right of survivorship, what that means is if something happens to one joint owner passes away, that property becomes 100% the property of the other co-tenant. Compare that with tenants in common. So again, this is when two people own property, two or more people own property. But instead of the property passing 100% to the survivor if something happens to one owner, tenants in common is a little different in that it's as if each co-tenant owns half of the property. Let's pretend like there are two owners here. So it's like each person owns 50%. And if something happens to one co-owner, then that person's 50% has to go through probate. It doesn't automatically go to the other co-tenant. And then, of course, you can own something individually in your sole name without anyone else being on title with you. Taking a look now at bank accounts. Bank accounts are going to depend on whether they're in your own name and your sole name, they're individually held, or whether they are held jointly with someone else. And once you figure out how the account is titled, then your next question is, does the account have a beneficiary on it? Sometimes this shows up as TOD or POD, ITF, that stands for transfer on death, payable on death, or interest for. If you see one of those abbreviations, then you'll know that your account has a beneficiary on it. Let's go through some easy examples. Again, taking a look at bank accounts and real estate only for now. So our first example here is a bank account. I have a joint bank account, joint checking account with my child. And the question is, does it need probate? So the answer is no, because if you own it jointly with your child, then if I pass away, then this account belongs 100% to my child. This is a joint account. Something happens to me. Now the account belongs to my child. it'll be very important for my child at this point to make sure that there is a beneficiary on the account, because if something happens to my child, then there's no beneficiary on the account, and that account is likely having to go through probate. Next example is, again, a bank account, but this one is I have a savings account in my sole name with $25,000 in it. Does it need probate? Savings account in my own name. It's got $25,000 in it. And the answer is it depends. If I do have a beneficiary on the account, then it doesn't need to go through probate. That account is going to go to whoever I name as the beneficiary. If, on the other hand, there's not a beneficiary listed on that account and there's no one to pass this account on to by way of a beneficiary designation, then it does have to go through a probate proceeding. Next example, let's switch over to real estate. In this example, my spouse and I own our home jointly as a married couple. Does it need to go through probate? And the answer is no. You own, or I own, this property jointly with my spouse. So we own it as tenants by the entirety. If something happens to me, my spouse owns our property 100%. Next example, again with real estate. My brother and I bought a vacation home together in Key Largo. We bought a place in the Keys together. Does this need to go through probate? My brother and I owned a property together. Does it need to go through probate if I pass away? And the answer is, again, it depends. It depends on how my brother and I own this property and how we hold title. If we own title as joint tenants with rights of survivorship, then no. If something happens to me, my brother owns our vacation home in Key Largo 100%. If we instead owned it as tenants in common, where my brother owns 50% and I own 50%, if I pass away, my 50% or my tenant in common interest in the property has to go through a probate administration. My brother still owns his half, but my half is going to go to my beneficiaries that I either name in my will or whoever my intestate beneficiaries are. That means when you don't have a will when you pass away. Next example is, again, with real estate. I'm single and I bought a home in Broward County. So this is a home that I bought in my own name. I bought it by myself, no other co-owner, and a piece of real estate in Broward County. If I pass away, does this property have to go through probate? Does it need probate? And the answer is yes. This is something that I own individually in my own name. You can't name a beneficiary on real estate, but it's not in anyone else's name but mine. So if something happens to me, this has to go through a probate administration. Slight variation of that example is, what if I'm married, but I bought a house in my name only? So the property's only in my name, even though I'm married, I bought it myself, my spouse isn't on title. If I pass away, this house still needs to go through probate. So even if you're married and you own a property in your own name, it's going to go through probate if something happens to you. So you definitely want to speak to an estate planning attorney. Make sure you have everything in order, ask your questions, make sure all of your affairs are taken care of. Here's our information. This is my email address. If you have any questions on any of these materials, or you want to send me an email with any other questions that you have about probate in Florida or the probate process in general, please feel free to send me an email. This is also our office line. If you have any questions, you can give us a call. And last, there's our website. We have a lot of great material on our website as far as blogs and articles. Lots of good stuff in there for you to read. Send us an email, give us a phone call, check out our website if you have any questions. Thanks so much for joining today, and hope you learned a little bit about probate and whether it needs probate.